Hello, everyone. Hello. Can you hear me all right? Yeah. Great. Welcome to Creatures of the Mind, Brains and part of our theme of brains and consciousness and non-human consciousness and all of those things that we're having. We have two events that are kind of dancing around that theme, one today and one tomorrow. So do come back if that is of interest. Hello, people watching at home. I don't know whether you're on that camera or that camera, but we know you're there and we appreciate it. It's lovely to be here. The first thing we're going to do is hear a very exciting and new commissioned poem from Luke Worthy, who is our Sheaf Poetry Festival 2023 Young Poet in Residence. I hear it's about tardigrades. I don't know anything else, but Luke is right here. So please give Luke a very warm welcome.
Hello everyone. I've kind of been obsessed with tardigrades like all my life, so this was such a nice opportunity to write about them. So I want to give some facts about tardigrades. They've existed for 500 million years. Most of that time obviously undiscovered by humans. They were only discovered in the 1700s. The largest tardigrade ever was 1.5 millimeters. The smallest was 0.1 millimeters. And actually in the right light you can see them with the naked eye. Tardigrades have survived all 5 mass extinction events, and it's thought that whatever crisis and apocalypse that's coming, they'll probably survive that too. And the way they survive this is by going into a process called cryptobiosis, and it's how the way that they dry their bodies out and kind of become a sort of lifeless ball. This is called the tun state, and there's like a museum in Amsterdam that you can go to called Micropia, and this poem is about my going there and encountering the tardigrades. I cycle east to a museum on microbes, nestled in the type of neighborhood you walk around, pretending you can afford to live there. By the entrance, school kids are all noise, wishing this was the zoo. In room 1, mold is raving through an unsuspecting brown loaf. Bacteria embalmed in petri dishes line the walls like platinum EPs. Screens show mitochondria tinseling the body's coral. Nuclei chugs DNA as if wanting to divide and forget, like the cells that sprout tendrils that reach out and grab. I move on. I know why I'm here. For the tardigrades. I find them in the center of an air-conditioned room, in an enclosure no smaller than a bottle cap. I peer through the scope, see an entire film of comets bound in orbit, chubby, comma-shaped bears letting us gaze at their tiny, translucent lives. They suckle the jelly from each other, pad through the whiteness like floating stairs, marshmallow accordions spinning out a quiet wish. I stand there a while, try to listen. I want to know what they want, why they are here. I'm about to leave when a scientist leans over, says, they're actually dying, you know. The light is scorching them. He's smug as if it was him that coaxed them onto the machine with his algae-filled pipette. I watch as they begin rolling themselves up in glowing shields across the pyre, hollowing themselves into crypts. I've been good my whole life, closeted myself when asked, never jumped to loo turnstile, discolored my ass with nair. But I know a puddle, slick with lichen, and like those campaigners who break into SeaWorld to take the orcas back out to the ocean, I'll free these tardigrades, tell their pea-milk souls that soon humans will be gone, and there'll be no monarchy, no water taxation, no rising in dark rooms for false gods, just stillness, moss, eggs. Thank you.
Oh my God, that was incredible. I was sat there with my mouth open for a little bit at the end. Free the tardigrades, but also like, yeah, save the world. I don't know. Wonderful. Like, thank you so much. Right. So I need to tell you a little bit about the structure of our reading. It's not going to take very long. Don't worry. We are going to have 3 fantastic readings, and then we are going to have a bit of a Q&A. We're all going to sit in these chairs among the jungle. And so if you, while anybody is reading their poems or just in general, you have a particular question you'd like to ask, just make sure you keep it, and we can ask it at the end. You online, you don't have to wait. You can just put it in the YouTube, in the chat box, and it will magically be transferred to my brain, and I'll ask it. So that's very exciting. Right, our first reader is Jo Carrick-Varty. More Sky, that is the right one, yes, is Jo's debut collection, and it deals with many very difficult subjects: addiction, domestic violence, and suicide. It free falls through memory and perception, asking questions about the reliability of each. Jo has published 2 pamphlets prior to this collection. I think Jo is in a very small minority of being like a returning sheaf poet, in fact, because his pamphlet Somewhere Far was a winner in the Poetry Business New Poets Prize, and we probably launched those here in 2019. It was such a different time. And his second 54 Questions for the Man Who Sold a Shotgun to My Father is published by Outspoken Press. He's editor of Bath Mag and currently the Anthony Burgess Fellow at the University of Manchester. So, very warm welcome to Jo Carrick-Varty.
Thanks, Susanna. Yeah, this mic's fine, isn't it? Yeah. Cool, yeah, it's great to be here. I am going to read... So, yeah, my book came out in January, and I might read a few poems from it, and then I might read a couple of new poems if I'm feeling a bit naughty. So Coventry City are in the final of the playoff final today, and my family moved from Dublin to Coventry in the 50s and 60s, and they settled there. And I'm going to read 2 poems in a minute that are like set in Coventry, because it's like literally happening in like 45 minutes. And my dad, who this book is largely about, is currently very drunk at the pub. I'm watching it, so in honor of that. But I might begin with a poem about... So this is about buying my dad shoes, because he can't afford them. So my sister and I, as like a tradition now, we buy him shoes every year for Christmas. And when I go to the pub back home and I see my dad there sitting there, he's with all the old boys and they're sat there and they all have the same pair of shoes on, and it's like this kind of cute, vulnerable thing. So this poem is about that, and it's called Sambas for Christmas. In a corner of some far-flung town, on some moon of some planet, at the edge of some pocketed galaxy, the souls of my father's new trainers are landing on tarmac, squeaking as they take off again, box fresh at the end of his faded black jeans. They will squeak for a week or so, and then he will die on his back in his sleep, like Jimi Hendrix after a night at a pub that's not quite my local, whistling as he stumbles home, running his fingers through a rosemary bush, awash in the chippies' neon blue. Believe for a minute that I am not a son who buys trainers for his father, but a molecule of gas inside a star whose light still touches a city that's not quite Oxford, where a father who's not quite mine tries on pairs of Adidas, Nike, struggling with the laces, the incomprehensible bow. So, it's very warm today and I'm really hot. I've got some beer actually. I'm terribly embarrassed. I got beer at 4 o'clock. Yeah, fuck it, it's fine. So, the next poem, what shall I do? So this poem is, I'll do this one. So, I used to be a postie, and I was a postie for quite a long time. When I finished education, I was unemployed for a bit, and then I signed on, and then I went to a job centre, and then I became a postie, and it's like the best job I've ever had by a long way. I'm now an editor, and it's rubbish, but this it's great for a number of reasons. The first reason why it's great is that everyone loves you, which is not normal. And then another reason why it's great is another reason why it's weird is that you have to wear like an outfit, and I was also the least senior member of the whole postie office, so I couldn't drive, so I just had to push a trolley a very long way and do all the jobs that no one wanted to do. The third reason why it's weird and great are the notes that people leave on their door when they've gone out and you have to put their parcel somewhere. They can become like really exuberant, and this poem, like, you would not believe how exuberant they can become. So this is called Dear Postie, and it's written in the form of one of those post-it notes on the door. Dear Postie, if no answer, please leave parcel behind rhododendron. If storm hits and rhododendron blows away, please leave parcel inside wheelie bin with brick on top. If crying baby can be heard on approach, tap 3 times on bottom left panel of shed window. Do not ring doorbell. If rainbow windmill spins slower than usual, open phone and call alcoholic father. If rainbow windmill stops spinning at any moment, come back in month with picture of alcoholic father eating fish and chips in park. If phone rings out, wait for nesting swallows to return from Africa, then call again. Do not mention alcoholic father to friends, colleagues, woman you love. Do not kiss woman you love. Do not eat, sleep, shit, watch TV until alcoholic father is spotted, leaving Tesco with Guinness and hula hoops. Do not, I repeat, do not drive to 24-hour Shell garage. Spend following afternoon outside alcoholic father's flat. Old ladies watching, bay windows blue with countdown. Cheers. So I moved to London like a while ago now, like 4 or 5 years ago, and when I got there, it took me a while to find a job, and I found a job, same job I'm in now, and the office of this job was in Canary Wharf, which is like the most horrific place ever, if anyone's been there. And on my first day, I was like eating lunch at the top of this glass building, thinking like, what on earth am I doing here? And there was a game of tennis on the TV, and I started writing this poem in my head at that moment, and it's called The Children. It has nothing to do with that anecdote. On the muted screen, a ball lands one side of a line, and this means that a person has won. The camera jiggles, zooms out, refocuses on a crowd who are cheering, which means that a person has won. Yes, clapping, back smacking, drink dropping, all signifies that yep, a ball has landed one side of a line, one side, not one side, but one side. Of course, right, because a person has won. A ball has landed. People are happy. And although this is not a metaphor for grief, I cannot deny that a ball, not a ball, but the ball has landed, is landing, will land until it stops being the ball and starts being a ball at the edge of a roofless room lots of people are jumping around inside of. Lots of sound, lots of screens, lots of open sky, and did I mention my dad has taken a shotgun to a field and I haven't realized because I am watching tennis, which means my dad has decided, is deciding, will decide to become not a dad, but the dad, is asking a man for a shotgun, is saying, can I buy, yes, bring me this much, and it's a man from the pub, someone I'll walk past for years, which means I am existing in relation to this moment. My sister is eating a chalk ice, romping around the garden, holding a toad in relation to this pocket of time. My mum zipping up our puffer jackets, pulling down our hats, while my dad walks through rain to an ATM, leaves the room with a shotgun in a duffel bag. This moment almost encased in glass, this skyscraper I am not really watching tennis inside of, not on my lunch break, not 26, but 9 years old, being pulled out of maths. My sister, 4 whole years, barely taller than a table, and we are not children anymore, but the children, those children, that child. Cheers. Thank you. So I might read 2 Coventry poems now then. So I've never read these at a reading before. They're kind of set there or in and out of there through time, really. And yeah, the first one is called A Week and Not a Word Since the Argument, and it's kind of a narrative thing, which has become like a dirty word in poetry, which is funny. But anyway, a week and not a word since the argument. I'm cycling near your block, cycling for no reason, to nowhere, but I'm near your block, on your road, in fact, passing the Baptist church and the red brick half-finished new build, and in no time at all, the shape of you is walking towards me, slap bang in the middle of the road. We talk, albeit gingerly, about my work at the play scheme, about the kids who fight there, about my sister off to uni in a month. To Glasgow, as if she could have picked a further place. You slur only a little when you say that. Where are you off anyway? Nowhere. The barman you call Mason nods, unlocks the side door, props it open, motions you inside. I look at my watch, 11 a.m. I'm 7 years old, waiting with a Coke outside the frosted glass of the 7 stars. Smelling cigarettes every time the door bangs. Then I'm you, in Coventry, your father at the bar, more hair than the both of us, taller in the backlit glow of the doorway than I'd known him from the black and white photo you stuck to the fridge one Christmas Eve. You gather us around, whiskey whisper, this is your granddad. No liver cirrhosis, not dead at 48, still bringing pork scratchings and a bottle of fizzy pop to land with a clink on the step. So, are you coming in or not? Cheers. Cool, I'm aware I'm not really sure what time I started, so I'll do a couple more. So, yeah, I'll read the second Coventry poem now. This is a prose poem, and I've never read this one either. And it's kind of about, like, weird energy that a lot of people experience, horrible energy when they arrive somewhere new. And my dad grew up in a really tight-knit Irish community in Coventry because when they moved, so like 500,000 people left Ireland in the 50s just because there was no work there. And my nana was one of 17 and my granddad was one of 13 and they all moved over at the same time. So my dad had like more than 100 cousins so he grew up Irish really and but here. So this is called The Brick. The brick is chipped and lying on the street before it becomes airborne. Before it becomes an object capable of flight, the brick is clay and water, rock weathering on a hillside, sediment on a lake floor. In Coventry, my Irish family sit down to dinner behind a window. Sky rains, robin perches, evening happens to the brick chipped in all its glory, no longer a piece of wall, not snug, the brick, one perfect handful on account of my family's Irishness. My dad's mixed accent got him kicked as a kid. My dad, Irish in Coventry, English in Dublin, touches the badge on his chest, my knee, when he tells me. Cheers. Cool. So I don't know which one to read now. So I might read another prose poem. Actually, no, I'll read this one. So This poem, so I went to Alaska a while ago, and I was living there on this farm. Well, I say it's a farm, it was like a homestead with this person called Cindy, which was me and Cindy for like miles and miles and miles and miles. And there were lots of bears everywhere, and I couldn't leave the homestead because of the bears, really, and I couldn't drive at the time. That has nothing to do with this poem. So I wrote this poem in Alaska, though, so that's why I said that. It's called "My Father is Sitting on the Other Side of the French Doors." Just sitting. Like a grizzly bear, I shoo away in June. Back hunched, staring at the ground, a red biro tucked behind his ear. I like to think he's marveling at the patio we dug, the pebble path I skipped school to help lay, or planning for another pond, another row of sunflowers by the wall. Right on cue, the cat arrives and figure-eights a plant pot as my father itches the back of her neck with the biro, flicks green flies from his shirt. I can never wake early from this dream, never sprint fast enough down the landing, never unzip the blinds, swing open the window in time to hear the thud of his footsteps over the shed roof, branches bouncing back to stillness. And I'll never know, how could I, that in this dream he'd grow old, grow fur eventually. The locals think I'm crazy. They say you shouldn't feed the bears, dumb Brit. They say a grizzly will return for a lifetime to the spot it once found food. The exact kink of river, stubby bush, overflowing garbage can, but I do it anyway, always at night, barefoot, in case he comes, my father. Crosses, in case he comes, my father. Sniffs me out, calls off this silly game, crosses the Atlantic, Canada, and I'm already gone. He'll see my shoes tucked behind the glass, laces still in a bow, and he'll think no different. He'll wait, he'll sit, back hunched, staring at the ground, till August ends, and the bears, wide-eyed, come for him too. So I might read one from here, and then I might read two new poems, and that'll be it. So I don't really know anything about the Bible, and how do I explain this? So this poem is named after someone in the Bible, someone called Lamech, who I thought was a person that they weren't. So there's two Lamechs in like the Old Testament, and they're both descendants of Adam and Eve, like directly. I guess we all are in a way, but written. And one of them is said to have been an alcoholic and been kicked out of pubs and fought, blah, blah, blah. And one of them is Noah's father. Now, I watched my dad fight in every single place, like you can imagine, the pub, at football, but also at the school fete, on the street, on holiday. And when I read that there was someone called Lamech, who was Noah's dad, I thought that's a really like beautiful and interesting thing that Noah went and built the ark, whatnot. But then it's not, it was the wrong Lamech, so anyway, it's in the book though. So yeah, no one needs to know. I ask my father to die under my breath in the back of a cab on a Saturday afternoon. Traffic at a standstill both ways, the pair of us heading for a cinema, like normal people. I ask the driver to take us back to the pub. I shake my head, begin to name things: tree, car, cloud, street lamp, pull my father down onto my lap, stroke his bald head. Look, I say, a park, children are playing. Listen, I say, it has started to rain. Cool, so I might read, like, not a very sad one. So I've never read this one either. This is a title poem from the book. It's called More Sky. And yeah, this is like, I don't know if people must have experienced this when like a building gets demolished and you suddenly you're like, what? And you didn't really ever notice the building, and but it like changes everything for a moment when there's just like sky everywhere. I've just explained the poem. What's the point in reading it? More Sky. That's funny, I did that. Have you ever had that thing when a building gets demolished? A building you walk past every day. A big but inconspicuous building. A building you've never properly looked at. Couldn't draw from memory, guess its number of windows. The impression of a building. It's the colour of sandstone in your periphery as you hurry into afternoons, interviews, wedding receptions, and all of a sudden it's gone. There's sky where that building used to be, and you're a mess with your child's bike helmet. So I don't have a child. I nicked that last line from a Jack Underwood poem where the speaker says, and you're a mess with your child's scarf, or I'm a mess with your scarf. I'm going to read 2 new poems. Yeah, let's do it. So I'm going to read from my phone, which is dangerous, but I've turned the data off. I read a new poem from my phone in November, quite a while ago now, and I got a message from someone on a dating app as I was doing it, and yeah, it was rubbish. This is called Sister Dream, and this poem is new, so be careful with your ears and kind. This is from a new thing I'm writing that's kind of about like love between siblings, and my sister, we're very close. Sister Dream. I feel a picnic lift from its field, ripped like a scab from the summer of my body. I would describe the dream. I would describe the events in great detail. They say those who go mad in the afternoon. In truth, nothing changed. We walked through yellow light to a picnic. We walked through thick time towards a group of families. Under the sky, we played along. We took part in the middle class activities of the local area. Nothing new was discovered. No jacket mistaken for a tent in the far-off wood. No dadless hour stretched over the trees. When I wake from the dream, I am relieved. I want to believe it is true, that he succeeded this time, that summer lowered his body gently, and like that, he found peace. So yeah, I'm going to read one little poem now. This is like an anecdote poem, and a lot of my friends who are poets rail against the anecdote poem, and I don't mind them. And this was written, I'm not going to say anything about this poem, I'm just going to read it. It's from a prose sequence that I'm writing at the moment, so yeah. Just my best friend and I lifting the metal shelving unit out the front door. It's nearly twice our height and rattling as we wobble in the Saturday morning light. 20 quid waits for us. Enough for a 3.5 of skunk stuck to the fridge with a Bart Simpson magnet and a note in my dad's handwriting. For Joe and Jake, take shelves to dump. The word dump underlined. We reach the first lake, sweating. Kids are carrying boats to the water. A swimmer's pink cap bobs up and down. At the turning for the second lake, we stop. The secret lake, as we call it, where homeless people camp, where kids don't go, where the fence posts to the train tracks are bent into a hole big enough for a body. And without a word, we're jimmying the unit along the lake's ragged lip. Through brambles, past condoms and needles, empty cans of super-strength cider, the stuff my dad will turn to a decade from this morning, from this littered bank, where, for the rest of our teens, we return, sharing spliffs, laughing at ourselves, at the boys we were, at the shelving unit like a shipwreck barely a metre from shore, an altar for all the lies we told, would tell, to ourselves and to the people who loved us. Feathered moss in the coin brown dark. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Joe. That was fantastic. I am going to now welcome our second poet of the event, Tania Hershman. Tania's still. Oh, I think if people see it, they buy it. I'm not entirely sure, but you should. Tania's still life with octopus often uses the non-human to ask big questions about humanity, to look at our minds and bodies from a refreshing distance. As a poet, Tania is refreshingly unafraid of asking difficult philosophical questions about how we coexist. Tania Hershman has published 2 collections with Nine Arches Press. Her debut was called Terms and Conditions. Tania describes herself as a queer writer of odd things, which is ideal. And as well as poetry, has written short stories and a hybrid book inspired by particle physics titled "And What If We Were All Allowed to Disappear?" Welcome, Tania Hershman.
Thank you. Firstly, it's so lovely to be here. I'm going to keep an eye on the time. I'll do it like this. Can everyone hear me? Excellent. Thank you so much to Susanna and Genevieve for inviting me. Jen and I were talking earlier that we're still not used to doing live events, and it's such a joy. It's such a joy to hear you all and to see you listening to all of us is just wonderful. And hello to everyone at home as well. We really appreciate you too. Wow, Joe, thank you. What an amazing reading. I feel like I need a few moments to recover. I don't know about the rest of you. I want to say as well, Luke, what a fantastic poem. I have been to the Microbe Museum in Amsterdam. It is fantastic. You didn't mention there's a tardigrade that's like 1 million times life size. It's like this big. Go for the tardigrades. It's wonderful. So I'm going to time myself because, hang on. I write very short poems, but I can talk about octopuses for a long time. So, what am I doing here? My collection is called Still Life with Octopus, and I thought I'd tell you a little bit about how my total obsession with octopuses began. It's this book. It's called Other Minds, the Octopus, and the Evolution of Intelligent Life by Peter Godfrey Smith. How many of you have read it? Oh, 2 hands. More, 3. I'd like to say excellent, and I've read it 4 times. This has become a complete obsession. I love this book. And he's a philosopher, Peter Godfrey Smith. And so he's already, the title of this event couldn't be more perfect. And I highly recommend it. It's got so many pages turned down that literally you could count the ones that aren't turned down. One of the thrilling things is that I started writing octopus poems, and then I was invited to go on Radio 3's The Verb Octopus Special Edition, because like I'm now Octopus Girl, because just people buy me octopus stuff. And Peter Godfrey Smith, the author of the book, was one of the guests on The Verb from Australia. So I read my poems inspired by his book in front of him, and it was fantastic. I hope he thought it was all right. And I then asked him if I could quote a little from his book as an epigraph. It is an epigraph. I can never get that. It's an epigraph, right, at the beginning of the book? I don't know. I'm just looking at Jen. So I thought I'd read you the tiny excerpt from his book that I've got in the front of my book. And I would also like to say, Susanna and I are both with Nine Arches Press. And always, Jane Kermain is our editor, and she is the best. Always go with an editor who offers you extra tentacles. Because look, I hope you can see that, more tentacles. So this is the epigraph from, hang on, Peter Godfrey Smith's book. To completely forego both skeleton and shell is an unusual evolutionary move for a creature of this size and complexity. An octopus has almost no hard parts at all. Its eyes and beak are the largest, and as a result can squeeze through a hole about the size of its eyeball and transform its body shape almost indefinitely. The evolution of cephalopods yielded, in the octopus, a body of pure possibility. I love that. Yes, that's for Peter Godfrey Smith. It's a beautiful book. It's beautifully written. I almost wanted to, Body of Pure Possibility as the title, but then I got a bit hooked on Still Life with Octopus. So what I thought I'd do is I'd read you, there are sort of 7 or 8 octopus poems throughout the book, Still Life with Octopus 1, 2, 3, etc. And then other poems on the facing page that I was writing without any thought that they might be collected together. And I think it's so wonderful. It's such a privilege to have a book. And also you get to try and put poems together and pieces together that somehow talk to each other. And this only came out 10 months ago. And every time I pick it up, I find hopefully new ways that maybe my pieces are in conversation. And I already feel like our pieces are already in conversation. So I'm very excited about the whole thing. So I thought I'll read you a couple of the poems and what's on the facing page. So this is Still Life with Octopus 1. There is an octopus in my chest, trying to give my heart to you. She will not listen when I say I need it. I have to keep prying her from my vena cava, the pulmonary veins. I ask her what makes her think you'd want it anyway. She shakes her head. Her colour shifts to indicate disappointment, hope, connection. Finally, I let her take it. Once it's gone, she settles in its place, exactly the right cardiac muscle shade. I worry about where my heart is now. Did it even reach you? Let go, whispers the octopus in my chest. These things are not in your control. Thank you. So I really thought I was going to write about octopuses, and then it turns out I have an octopus as an imaginary friend. And this is how it is to be a writer, isn't it? I just want to say as well, Joe, I now think all my poems are anecdote poems, and I don't care. I think we should celebrate the anecdote poem, because clearly that was totally autobiographical. This is on the facing page, and some of the other poems in the book are inspired by things that happened to me when I was walking by the river by my house. I live in Manchester, and I live opposite the River Mersey. And I had a lot of river poems. My editor had to say, I think we need to take a few of these out. So this is called What You May Be Offered. A man in a van stopped to ask if I wanted a mattress. I said no. I was sitting drinking tea by the river. How did he think I'd get it home? He was on his way back, he said, from a mattress show. What was it about me, sitting by the river drinking tea, that made him think this was what I needed? I'm here again today, by the river, with my tea inside a jar for me. Before we met, I'd watched all those videos of those experiments. She sighed, but did it, said I could screw the lid, released herself easily. You could become any shape you want, I said. She said nothing. One arm sent itself out to switch the kettle on. While she made us tea, I put the jar back in the cupboard, feeling that slight ache from too much sitting in my hip bones, my lower back, where fixed part meets fixed part of me. As I get older, I get more jealous of the octopus not having hip bones and a lower back. And saving a fortune on ibuprofen, frankly. This is Still Life with Octopus 3, and then I'll read you the poem on the opposite page. My octopus, 3 hearts, 8 semi-independent arms, can never choose just one book to read, skims several, gets the plots confused, although arm 5 has a good grasp of a novel, while her brain is wrapping itself around best American science and nature writing. And I wonder how all this goes on at once, without a centre where the story sits. So, small octopus digression. I do have a page of notes, 2 pages of notes. I'm tending to do this now with books because there's just stuff I want to share. Did you know that octopuses have 3 hearts? Yeah, some of you did know because it's very exciting. You've probably seen that Netflix, My Octopus Teacher. Yeah. Things have got, I'd like to say I was into octopuses before that, but you know. But it's just fascinating that we don't really know, and I'll get to that in a minute, what the relationship is between the octopus's body and its arms. There's so much we don't know. I find them utterly fascinating. So there are neurons in the arms as well as in the body. We'll get to that in a minute. But I also am very interested in the idea of story. And I come from a short story background, so I'm always thinking of stories. And the idea of, perhaps for our discussion later, where does a story sit inside our bodies? Which part of our brain is a story in? We are story creators all the time. And this is the poem on the opposite page, which once again we're back by the River Mersey. And then God. And then God sends someone else's Jewish grandmother to stop me with a question about birds I can't answer. She says, as if this is her river, "I've never seen you here before," then presses for my exact address. Instead of the usual, "Such a nice girl, no husband," she asks, "No dog?" I don't know why. I tell her then that I'm a poet. But the gleam in her eyes warns me this is the point to leave. The unasked dancing on the path between us. Will you make a poem out of me? Yes, I will. Of course I will. It's all a poem, right? Thank you. Still Life with Octopus 4. Keeping an eye on time. My octopus introduces me to her friend. A saltwater crocodile, she tells me. Look at that skull, I say. What a magnificent head. I am a bit jealous, says my octopus, of the power of her jaw, given that I have no bones at all. Her friend takes all our compliments in silence, just a nod. She isn't chatty, says my octopus, that's why we get on. I understand, I say, and since they seem to want to be alone, put down the tea tray. As I leave, I hear the crocodile murmur, "What do you see in her?" She's like an alien, says my octopus. So fascinating. And I love the idea that we think we're studying and watching the octopuses, but perhaps they are also studying and watching us. And in terms of human motivations, I thought I'd share this one with you. Two friends and I started a Twitter account about 6 years ago called On This Day She, putting women back into history one day at a time. And we then had a book that came out 2 years ago, which has a different woman being put back into history for every day of the year, from all over the world and across all time periods. And I wrote the entry for Catherine the Great. You probably wonder where this is going. So this was inspired by me writing that entry. It's called Catherine the Great Reassesses Her Expansionist Policies. I am Catherine the Great, and I seize this jetty. This is my section of the lake. These are my ducks. I claim all reeds. I declare vertical dominion. If you want to use my airspace, pay me. Where is my army? Just one phone call away. They say I am an enlightened despot, so I'll teach the ducks to read, the reeds to sing, and I will bring my lover here. Although she won't speak, there is too much talking in my portion of the lake. You ask, why am I content with part? Why not take it all? Child, you too will learn that happiness never comes from having more of anything. There is a wonderful TV series called The Great, which is very loosely based on the life of Catherine the Great. It's not at all like that and not suitable for children. So back to the subject of the octopus and her arms, and also staying with the idea of humans and the interplay between the human and the octopus. And I also have a background in science. I have a degree in maths and physics. Feel free to ask me about that. If the Q&A, I can't remember much of it now, but I'm fascinated by scientists and the scientific method. And so this one is inspired by the octopuses, and this is called A Hierarchy of Arms. From observations, we believe an octopus's arms to be semi-autonomous. We cannot be certain, we disagree. Some say its arms act only when authorized. Some say, what proof do you have? And then we fight, politely, in our own language, in journal papers and at conferences. One or other of us floats one or more outlandish theories. The arms are separate creatures, barely attached, parasites. Or the body keeps some arms on a tight leash, charged with movement, hiding, foraging. The others explore, gather data. To test this, we trap octopuses, affix our probes. They rip them off. At night, after they think we've gone, we wait behind the laboratory door, and although none of us ever speaks of it, we are fairly sure we hear them laughing. So I'll read you 2 more that are on the facing pages, which I think gives an idea of how thinking about octopuses and reading this book 4 times and watching a lot of those videos got me thinking in a different way about myself as well. Still Life with Octopus 6. Between the octopus and her arms is an agreement. Arm will wander, touch, explore, report some of its findings back, but no obligation. Each arm may keep things to itself, how it felt to stroke the metal remnant of that hull, what it found behind the furthest shell. And the body, too, has things it will never tell. I am interested. I am interested in myself. Sometimes I examine my hands as if they belonged to someone else. I watch the fingers move, ripples of skin, the wrinkles that appear. I am interested in my limbs, the miracle of forearm, a mole, the soft side of the neck. I cut my own hair by feeling edge and curl. I am interested in the age of me. Notice changes in my shift, my spin. I am interested in breath, in breathing, in what I lose, in all that I take in. Thank you. I'm doing well with time. So I'm going to finish with the final octopus poem in the book. Thank you again for having me. It's both a privilege and a challenge, I think, to come in between Joe and Jen, but what a delight to be here. And this is the penultimate poem in the book. Still Life with Octopus 7. And what if the octopus could talk? And what if they turned to us and said, enough with all the jars, the tests of what we can get into and get through. You've seen what we can do. What if instead they took us in their arms, said, we've been watching too. We've seen what you get yourselves into, what you're struggling to get through. Let us help you see your jars, your lids. Let us teach you to loosen, breathe, undo. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Thanks so much, Tania. I'm sure your octopus-related thoughts and questions are not just online, but in the room are like percolating. So make sure you are ready. I'm going to get some water because I'm sat there looking at it and I'm just so thirsty. And I am also going to introduce Jen Hadfield. Jen Hadfield's The Stone Age is a stunning exploration of geological timescales that are slower and quieter than our own, where consciousness belongs to all the landscape's inhabitants, the rocks, the sea, the shore, against which humankind are brief, soft fireworks prone to go off at a moment's notice. That was a quote from a poem, but I can't remember which one, so I'm sorry about that. Jen Hadfield is an award-winning poet, creative writing tutor and artist with special interests in ecopoetics and neurodiversity. In 2008, she was the winner of the T.S.Eliot Poetry Prize. Her 4th collection, The Stone Age, won the 2021 Highland Book Prize. She is currently editing her first work of lyrical non-fiction, that's very exciting, storm pegs for Picador, and she lives in Shetland. So welcome to Jen.
Thank you for the introduction. You made the book sound really good. Yeah. And thanks to Luke and Tania and Joe for your gorgeous readings. I feel really kind of moved and bowled over by doing a live reading too. There's been very, very few of them recently, and that's partly where I live and partly what we've all weathered together and separately. It's more nerve-wracking, it definitely is, but it's lovely, it's good too. I'm going to get some water as well. Hot as heck. And the heat kind of makes my brain work slower, but that's quite nice actually. It's, I don't know, it feels like there's more space for thoughts to flow in and out. So I like this theme of exploring different kinds of consciousness very much. And it's really nice when you get invited to do a reading and you kind of start flicking through your books and trying to work out what you might read, and you think, oh, I do have something to say about this, you know, because you can write a book and discover through the reading of it to people what it was you were saying. Sometimes you don't know when you're writing the poem what it is that you're saying. And it's nice when you think, oh, someone might want to hear that. You know, it's really lovely. It's like finding your people. And I've had that feeling throughout this whole reading. Actually, it's like, oh yeah, I want to be part of this herd and this species. So I'm going to start off with a poem called Lichen from Byssus. I probably don't need to open it because it's very short and I probably have it by heart, but that's reassuring, isn't it? Lichen. Who listens like lichen listens, assiduous millions of black and golden ears? You hear and remember, but I'm speaking to the lichen. The little ears prunk, scorch, and blacken. The little golden mouths gape. So this idea of listening is something that's cropped up quite a lot for me, I think. Sort of swimming up from my subconscious in my years of intermittently writing poems, and I almost didn't notice it happening, and then when I was kind of looking for poems for reading one day, I thought, oh, there's a lot of poems about listening and silence in here. I wonder what that's all about. And this is how you kind of discover things about yourself, I think, by articulating some of these things in images. So I think listening's really important. Obviously, a bit of a trite thing to say. And sometimes we pick up a signal from somewhere else, and sometimes we don't. But I'm really interested in how we show that listening on the page and within a poem as well. And I'm really interested in the silent words in poetry, so the things that aren't couched in what we might call language, but the things that happen between the lines and between the stanzas and around the poem, and the things that we struggle to say, because I think a lot of people talk about poetry or associate poetry with fluency and articulacy, but so often for me it's coming from a place of not being able to speak and struggling to say something. So it was the biggest surprise in the world to me at university on my MLit when I discovered that I liked doing that out loud. You know, I never thought I'd want to stand up in front of people and do this. And I like that nominally we're all using a shared language and we can all be talking about the same thing, but probably experiencing it really, really differently from each other. So I wrote a set in this book of definitions which were inspired by the Florentine Codex, and I liked the idea of playing on the idea of dictionary definition, and pretending that I could define something that was indefinable. So I'm just going to read you one of these, I think. This is called The Word Died. And it's set in Fair Isle. It's Fair Isle I'm seeing when I speak this. It's a cliff-sided stack, almost an island. A human can't stand upon that high tilted pasture, but life crowds its cliffs, sheep and nesting maas, the waste-not plants of heath and moor. You hear the waves breaking, but you can't see them. You shrink down into yourself as you reach the edge, getting your head around where you are. It's marvellous. It's awful. It is always on, like a massive and unfolding its wings and mantling. It was here all along, reached by Sherva and the derelict mills, turf sweating in the hot midgy smur. I should be watching that clock. I can't remember when we started. Am I going to about 10 past? Yeah, that sounds about right to me as well. Thank you. I'll read that poem, Dolmen. So this poem, before I do, this book has some really strange looking poems in it, which are big and grayscale and really fill the page with big monolithic blocks of text. And I was playing around with the idea of trying to imagine what stones might say if we could hear them saying it. And who knows? I never read them. I don't want to read them because I can't imagine what voice to do them in. But I wanted a sense of the human voice being dwarfed by these big stony voices and them feeling really distinct. But there is a poem where a human addresses a standing stone and invites it to say something, and hoping that it will come with some kind of profound answer to us all. And I tend to read this one quite fast because I think the stone poems are probably really ponderous and slow and geologically dragging, which is how I talk sometimes too. So I'll try and do this one quite rapidly. Dolmen. Standing stone, let's talk about you. Who knows how deep this grief goes down in your thick waist and whalebone skirt? Goodness knows how deep and wide, twinkling modestly with garnet, feldspar, whiffing faintly of bruised mushroom. Now, we learn in school about deep time. 6 o'clock shadow, lichen, pouring down like porridge, lichen. But humankind a brief, soft fireworks, prone to go off at a moment's notice. Are we even speaking the same language? Urgently we hammer at your boarded up window, rattle and try your gritty grey door. That's quite a good addition. You just added a whole new dimension to the performance piece. That was quite... It might be the stone ringing up. It's finally getting its answer in. Don't worry, don't worry. So the speaking and the not speaking is something that I explored in a poem called Rhubarb. I really like a cheap pun, and I was thinking a little bit around the edges of this poem about when at the back of film sets or whatever, people are asked to say rhubarb, rhubarb, rhubarb to kind of conjure a sense of hubbub around a scene. So that idea of saying nothing to say something, I suppose. But it's also just a poem for a friend that I go for a walk with every midsummer at midnight across the cliffs, and because you can do that in Shetland, it's very light at midsummer. And we always take in his favourite rhubarb plant, which grows by the shore and is protected from sheep by a kind of a pen of its own. And we talk at each other and don't really listen to what each other says, but it feels like we're also communicating on another level as well. Rhubarb. In winter, low tide comes to the rhubarb box and bears stiff reefs of coral. Midsummer we rustle rhubarb, lean and feral from its driftwood corral. It's late, but I'm not tired at all as you yearn over the rotting fence. I say, careful, you'll be man overboard. Then you plunge like a pearl fisher into creaking billows, clipping thin petioles with your special knife. In the west, the sky is pink as rhubarb. You say you're not that into sunsets. We hike to the far cliffs as if the night will never fall. My bouquet of rhubarb, weirdly heavy, like an armful of water, mille fior. I say, they called him the rhubarb rustler. You say, everything's early this year. You say the rain is good when it's soft. You say, it's fine to have children to borrow. Now a bird begins to whistle. The rusty ears creak and swivel. Dim green of the hill is yawning visible, and the little voiced dawn will soon be audible. And did I say how late it is? In the east the sky is pink as rhubarb. So we trim at both ends these lean, sour, freckled stems, and I say, I'm just so tired. So I think we'll move into the shape-shifting material. I've got Tom Waits in my head saying, I think it's time we moved into the religious material. Maybe just one of these, I think. This is a poem called Skunk Cabbage. A lot of these poems are set in Shetland. Skunk cabbage grows in Canada. You find it in ditches and bogs and some kind of foresty bits. It's kind of a swampy plant. And it's a spectacular thing, and it sends up a lovely pistil. I can't explain what my attachment to it is. It probably didn't need to be a skunk cabbage, but I think I just got a bit fixated on them, which can happen, right? Okay. And I wanted to... No, I didn't. I was going to say I wanted to explore the places that our human species runs up against other species, but that's not how it goes with writing a poem. You write a poem and you're like, oh yeah, it's about those places that we run. You discover it in the process. Skunk cabbage. I have no idea where I comes to an end. Perhaps in walls I frantically throw up, hands flattering like birds between the stones, or in skin touchy as an electric fence. And when you cross this moat of oily water, to plant your foot on the welcome mat of my liver, I burp out the naked truth like a novelty doorbell, or something spouting from a vegetal gland, a rattlesnake pistil, waxy white, sheathed in a fountain of indigenous leaves. I'm editing my set list as I go. So listening and not listening. I'm really interested in what happens when we don't and can't listen, and I'm really interested in the attempt to listen and what we might hear, as I said. And I'm also dreading the start of strimming season, which is pretty much upon us. And I found myself writing a surprising numbers about poems about removing grass from my wee plot. I really don't want to remove grass. I want to grow a meadow, which bees will come to. But the vexing thing is that to make a meadow, you have to do a wee bit of mowing at key points in the year, after the flowering and all of those things. But Shetland grass it's probably the same as Orkney grass. I think it's got a life of its own, and it grows like stink in the midsummer. And the wind tussles it and makes it almost like a metal, really, really hard to work through. So you need some kind of tool that is suitable for that. So I have a strimmer poem and a scythe poem. And weirdly, one seems to be about, one ended up being politically about not being able to listen, amongst many other things. And the other one felt like it was about listening and circular time. So I'll start with the angry one. It's called Strimmer. I really thought I was just venting about how much I hate using a petrol strimmer, but it turned into this political thing. And you can substitute a political leader of your choice for the you, if you like. Strimmer. Strimmer, you butcher, you a soul are the hardest to imagine. A poor soul, a kind soul, a good soul, easy. Soul, a deep ladle, soul, a ladder. How intimately we tangle with our tools, grafting them into our brains like prosthesis. I'm appalled by your skinny neck, thrusting the flat howl of your face into the meadow's tangle, screaming at stinging nettle, couch grass, clover, sending flying little moth scrap souls. I can't find a thing to admire in you, thrash metal strap-on whose obsession with yield makes yielding impossible, stumbling onward in evangelical fury, roaring your hateful rhetoric. All small voices drowned out in the carnage, the fresh green blood flying in my face. I did feel better after I'd written it, actually. Okay, and this is like the antidote. When I was trying to work out how to tackle my yard one day, a friend said, "How about a scythe?" And I thought, "Oh, how about a scythe?" And I bought an Austrian scythe, and I worked out how to wield it. An Austrian scythe is light and small, and not like one of those big kind of Grim Reaper things. It's a lovely art and a lovely tool. Considering my wild yard, you recommend a scythe, except in your tongue it sounded like sigh. That is how they say it in Shetland. Scythe is a sigh. It sounded like you said a sigh. In the northern countries, to say yes is a sigh, a kind of swift indrawn gasp, like the trick of swallowing a knife. Times past, folk worked, folk wrote wi' a sigh, met Hearst with a scythe, a kind of acquiescence, the keen edge put on summer, summer tilted to the winter good. It swees like a paper cut, the land regrets its violet hood. It's only one way to keep up with time, one beat behind each brief hushed smile, subtracting from the sward with a singing scythe. I step, I sigh, I step, I sigh. Thank you. And I'm just going to finish with one more slow, quiet thing, which is named for the mountain Ben Wyvis, which I was going to say which grows, it doesn't grow, which is north of the writing centre at Maniac Moor. I don't know if anyone's been there. It's a very, very wonderful place. And it's just a big lumpy mountain. I love a big lumpy mountain. I hear it's got a lovely plateau. I've never been up it. Would quite like to. Ben Wyvis, would you tell me the whole thing again from the top, now the long wide strath is made simple with snow, each word minted, a quiet impression, a trail of glazed footprints, long after the thaw. Walk me through it again. Now I can hear a little more. Now the memory's calm, monumental in snow. I track the spoor of your wicking words, you long gone. The wound of your trail, thin flows of clear gore. I cradle in my palm each floating question. Thank you so much.
Sort of forgot about getting up then, but thank you so much, Jen. That was fantastic. I'm now going to invite the poets to come and join me in these special chairs. I mean, there's nothing special about them, but they are for poets, so I guess that's the thing. I'm going to move this out the way. Take that out. Is that really in the way? Is there? I'll get my thing. I think we've got one microphone to pass down the line, so that'll be. There might be a bit of this, but I think that's going to be fine. I wanted to ask you all. I wrote down a load of questions, and I don't want to ask any of them now. Something about what it is about poetry that makes it so good for investigating thoughts and brains and consciousness, and or any of those three things, in your opinion. Would anyone like to?
Yeah, I'll grab it. Yeah, I guess partly because for me with my writing it'd be more to do with my poems are way more articulate than I am, especially with. So I'll write a poem and I'll been worrying about something for ages, right? And I'll write a poem and it'll be something really banal, and then I write a poem and then I actually realise what I was actually worrying about. Right. And I have no idea why that happens, but I guess it's something to do with like the subconscious being just like overriding in poetry. I don't know. But yeah, it's like something to do with what I can't reconcile, what I'm trying to reconcile when I'm awake. I can't do it, but I can easily reconcile it in a poem. I think so. Yeah. Do you have any?
I want to go away and think about it for 2 weeks. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, do you want to keep you?
I want to just cogitate.
That's really interesting, because when you said that, Susanna, a part of me which it got quite defensive, because I also write prose and all sorts of other things, and I'm like, no, wait, and then I'm like, oh no, actually, there is something, I think, because I write short stories and had a novel out last year, and I'm working on another novel and various hybrid things. There's something about poetry. I also feel like Joe, that my writing is much cleverer than me, and it knows things way before I know them, and years later I'll be like, oh, my writing knew that, it was in a short story. But when my first pamphlet came out, someone mentioned that every single poem in the pamphlet ended with a question, and I hadn't even noticed it. So there's something for me that poetry allows me, perhaps because coming from the world of short story, I can let go of some of that storyness and maybe sit with the question in a different way in a poem. I feel like my mission is to ask better questions, not to find answers. And I feel like poetry, with the shape of it in some way, allows me to do that in a way that other forms maybe don't.
Just really what they said. I think I agree with all of that. And also it feels really good. Mm-hmm. I think it's just that. I think you said something like, I think my poetry's cleverer than me and my writing's cleverer than me, and I just feel kind of vaguely generally like a better person if I'm writing something, which makes me wish I was doing it more often, because it's nice feeling kind of better about yourself in that way. But also I think it's amazingly suited to holding big, abstract, universal, shared stuff in a safe way, and in a way that scaling it down to something that we can engage with and turn in our hands and our mind. So I repeatedly talk about it to students as a kind of a snow globe that you've got a model of the whole world or whatever it is you're thinking about in this nice dome, and you can shake it and watch the weather, but it's safe. And I think there's something about that that helps with processing as well. So it feels like it moves the furniture in your brain, and that miniaturization feels really important and particularly useful for ecopoetics or poems where we try and tackle the big existential things that terrify us and that we can't process that easily in other ways. So the miniaturizing's important, I think.
That snow globe idea, like a poem has its own sort of world and its own logic always, doesn't it? I think, and its own time, and that's what I was thinking about the anecdote poem. That, you know, I'm not against an anecdote poem, but what those poems are really good at doing is like plonking you in that time, like putting you in a particular moment in time, and all of you kind of write about time as well, memories and sliding backwards and forwards, and the time of how stone or rock time is so different to human time. That isn't really a question. That's more a comment than a question. Oh no! But I don't know if any of you have any thoughts about that.
Defense of the anecdote poem. Well, yeah, I guess like, and with time as well. I guess was like subject, well, nuance, right, and then complication, and like, I would say that experience can be really, really complicated, and like sometimes I think I'm doing the opposite, where like you get like a language poet and then maybe like a more of an anecdotal poet or a poetics, and I'd say I don't think I'm trying to complicate when I'm writing, but like if you're writing about subject matter as opposed to just writing language poetry, I guess the subject will be complicated because it's about experience, and experience is like naturally complicated. But I guess like at what point does like surely the poem, I don't know, I'm constantly like worried about this, which is stupid, but like should the poem needs to come before the experience maybe, or like be more important than the experience? And I'm constantly, because I'm writing about real things all the time that have happened and like revealing family secrets in poetry, and which is a weird like inclination. I still don't understand why I'm doing it really, but I think it's like you've got to pay homage a little bit to like the experience, and I don't know quite what I'm saying right now, but if that makes sense, like you don't want to be too simplistic, but you don't want to like complicate too much, if that makes sense.
I think so, and it's got to be an experience as well.
Yeah.
That's a whole other like cloudy stuff, but it's interesting.
Anything?
Good question. Anything. I think I have a little something to say about that, or to wonder about that, and a little something to wonder about time. But I love your poems, and I love what they say about experiences, and I guess in our language we have maybe there's a few dismissive kind of associations with the word anecdote, but that's what it is and what we do, and that's life. And I feel like those universal experiences that we're all trying to share and access with each other in our poetry, you can't go straight to the universal, and you've got to access it through particular stuff. And that's why the detail in your poems is so moving and so beautiful, because they're giving you that recognizable thing that you get between humans, but only the specifics could only have happened to you and in your language. And the very brief thought about time, I suppose, is just an observation that in editing that non-fiction work I'm working on at the moment, my lovely and wonderful editor is really trying to get me to create a coherent time scale. I'm writing about Shetland seasonally and also about bigger kind of one-off events, but she's adamant that it flow in a kind of a coherent narrative arc, which is fair enough, because it was pretty confusing the way I had it before. But that's not how I experience time at all. Like when it's vår or spring in Shetland, it's every spring that ever was, and makes complete sense to put all of those experiences together in one moment. But maybe poetry lets us do that sometimes, but maybe non-fiction doesn't, depending on the editor. Did you want to?
Oh dear, I have I have too much to say. I wrote a whole book on time a couple of years ago, a creative non-fiction book, which I call a chrono-memoir, which was trying to be how I experience myself moving through time and how we have time within us. It's a hybrid and it's very odd, and I haven't found a publisher yet. Just want to put that out there. But I have so many thoughts, and I was coming at time from so many different angles, what it was, what it could be, how we use it. So I'm not going to go into all of those, but I wanted to say, I read an article recently because people already send me things about octopuses. Someone sent me an article, I think it's in Aeon magazine, AEON, about octopuses and how they might experience time completely differently because of the way they move, and because they move in many, many more dimensions and directions. And the way we think physically about time is like the future is in front of us, the past is behind us. But perhaps for octopuses, it's completely different. So I just thought I'd plant that thought and leave it at that.
I've always suspected that octopuses experience many multiple dimensions of time at once. That one who knew the results of the World Cup, like, it's because he just lived in the future. Does anyone in the audience have a question? Tom, I'll just give you. Oh no, there's a roving mic. I'm going to keep this to myself.
Thanks. That's loud. Yeah, thanks everyone for reading. It's been very enjoyable. Perhaps also poetry, time exists differently within a poem as well, kind of collapses time. But I wanted to ask something about negation and negativity, particularly like thinking about Joe's poetry. Like there's lines, not quite my father, that kind of line of questioning, not quite something. And that negation allows you to get closer to the actual thing. And I just wanted you to speak about your relationship to negativity, not in the not in a bad sense, but like in the absence of something. Because even the title poem, right, you're noticing something through absence. And I just think negativity seems to be such a prevailing force in the book.
Cool, thank you, Tom, for that question. God, yeah, I think negative space, I guess it leaves room for filling. And also, again, like a minute ago, when I was saying about reconciling a distance, autobiographically as well, like my father has always been something I can't reconcile, his family as well, something we haven't reconciled, it's very painful and sad. So I'm writing to reconcile that, to fill negative space. But I think in terms of, well, like a negative space, not quite my father, not quite my local, not quite, it's kind of like a way of doing approximation and having like some of something that aren't quite what they are. But yeah, I think it's to do with trying to write, like I've been thinking about recently about reconciliation and like doing the opposite of complicating, and trying to fill space. But yeah, I think the negative space in the poetry is like room to fill, I guess, and like to cross time, and to like, because yeah, none of us in our family, like we don't, everyone's very like scattered, and we talk occasionally, and it's painful and sad, and we're just now reconciling it at the moment. And it's like after my books come out, my family members have reached out to me, and we're like chatting now and sorting it out, hopefully. So I think the poems are doing that with negative space, hopefully in my like personal life as well. But yeah, thank you for that question.
No, I think I want to leave that one to you.
I have a question from the online audience, if you're ready for another question. It is a question for Tania. It is. Do you think octopuses or any other highly intelligent animal could be capable of creating art? What conditions might be necessary for them to do so, such as a longer lifespan?
Oh my goodness. Is this, I'm just wondering now if this is tying into the whole AI discussion, which I don't even want to get into. But very interesting, the end of that question is, would they maybe need a longer lifespan? Because octopuses don't live very long. The ones we know about, they live like 12 to 18 months, possibly. All of you have seen my octopus teacher, so you know what happens to a female octopus when she has babies. Not fun, grim. But is time necessary to make art, and what is art anyway? I don't know. I feel like there is this very interesting, there's so much we don't know, and this is about negative space again. So much we don't know about octopuses, so much we don't know about ourselves, let alone other species. Octopuses and other cephalopods, I had to practice saying that, like cuttlefish, their skin changes colour. And they've got layers in the skin called chromatophores, I think, which are colour changing. They also think that octopuses themselves are colourblind. So it's like, what is the colour changing for? And there's a beautiful video that you can find that seems to be perhaps an octopus dreaming and its skin is changing colours. So what if the colour changing isn't for some evolutionary purpose? What if that is art? And who's to say that it isn't? How do we ask them? Would be my next question back to the questioner. But I'm going to be thinking about that. This is an interesting question that I have no answer to.
Yeah, and it makes me think of how close art is to dreaming and how close dreaming is to art. Yeah, I don't think I've got anything very profound to add to that. I'm enjoying thinking about it. I'm actually just thinking about how my cat decides to play, and goes to his basket, has a look inside, and picks a toy and takes it out and plays with it. But there must be this interesting transition moment where they're like, I'm going to look in that basket. There'll be something in that basket. I wonder which thing it is I'm going to take out and work with, you know. Do we need time to make art? Probably yes, but also sometimes you can make a poem so very rapidly. It can be sort of 5 years in the making, but also 5 minutes that were stolen if the conditions were right, you know. And sometimes I can't tell the difference between the poem that came in 5 minutes and the one that I'd worked on for 5 years. And if octopuses have a different understanding of time, then yeah, maybe. Yes, good.
You made me think of something else, which is this idea about play, which I love, because we do know from the experiments with octopuses that they are what we would call really playful. So does any species need to be able to play in order to make art? I love that thought. Another question. I love the idea of play.
I'm just going to chip in really quickly before I pass this on and say that's maybe the tricky thing about when you're living a busy multitasking life and your attention's going in lots of different directions. Play's probably the first thing to go, isn't it? And that's maybe when the creativity kind of escapes.
I think that is, in terms of questions and poems and all of that, is all we have got time for. But there are books outside, very importantly, on the bookstall. I'm sure if you ask nicely, all these poets will happily sign their books for you. And we have another event starting in half an hour if you're hanging around, and that's going to be amazing as well. So that's Speaking Up, and it's about poetry and activism. Please give another very enormous round of applause for Jo Carrick-Varty, Jen Hadfield and Tania Hershman.